Uh-oh. We got a moron here.
Presenting the distinguished international news commentator and foreign correspondent,
Smaulgld. This has been an extraordinary week in world affairs.
Now, I told Hillary Clinton that that's moronic.
The eminent genius of Elon Musk. Now, Elon Musk has made Smaulgld's Moronica probably for the last 5 weeks running, first starting with his April Fool's moronic joke where he was saying that Tesla had gone bankrupt on April 1st. Well, that's not really that much of a joke because it's quite possible that Tesla could go bankrupt because it is not cash flow positive, has not turned a profit, but no way that Elon Musk couldn't resist to make a joke about the possible bankruptcy or the actual bankruptcy of Tesla. And then he went one step further. He then criticized The Economist magazine and basically who was intimating that perhaps Tesla would have to raise more funds because it wasn't going to make it on the existing funds and in the cash flow in the company. And he basically called The Economist a boring magazine who used to be good, but now because they're criticizing Boy Genius, they were no longer a worthy magazine. Then he went one step further, and during the conference call, he had egg on his face because he had to admit that the company was not going to be cash flow positive and that they perhaps would need to raise more funds. And he didn't like the line of questioning that the analysts were giving him, and he basically cut them off, said they were boring, and the stock market plummeted. I'm surprised the stock is still where it is. There must still be a lot of faith, for whatever reason, in this company. But we had he also won an award for being some type of eminent genius over the past 600 years from some scientific academy last year. I'm not impressed when a quote, genius has to run on government subsidies, runs a company for dozens of years and still can't make a profit. I'm not sure where the genius is in that. But in any event, it's been a bad week for Elon Musk because another one of his cars burst into flames, tragically in a violent crash in Switzerland. This is the second such this self-driving car that they have. They're having a lot of problems with it. Not quite sure that this is genius. It's not really moronic, but it's the way that I believe Elon Musk responds to these things is indeed moronic. Now, it won't be funny until someone loses his audience. Uh-oh. Jimmy Kimmel notes American people have had enough of Trump bashing. Really? Now, maybe it was funny for a month or maybe it wasn't, but given that half the country, or approximately half of the country, voted for Donald Trump, watching him be bashed for a year and a half as if there's nothing else that could potentially be funny on late night TV has begun to wear thin on the American public, and it's just finally dawned on Jimmy Kimmel that perhaps he's losing his audience due to this incessant Trump bashing. Take a pay cut. Uh-oh. Selma Hayek calls for male stars to get a pay cut. She's not satisfied with advocating for women to get more pay. She'd feel better if men got paid less. This is the old argument that somehow if everyone is equal, if you can bring someone down a notch, people will somehow be happier. She's not satisfied that movie stars make a lot of money, both men and women. She's not even happy or happy to have women make more. She figures if men just took less, the world would be a better place. Now, I think that is indeed moronic. Now, here's what internet trolling really looks like. This was done for political reasons. The Democrats released some of the examples of the Russian troll farm ads, thousands of ads created by Kremlin-backed organizations that targeted American voters on Facebook. Now, we know that these ads probably had absolutely nothing to do with the election or impact of the election, but what's really moronic is that they've paid so much attention to it when, remember, the purpose of the original probe was to go after Trump's collusion with Russia. These Russian troll farms, they've established no ties to Russia, but it's even worse. They were ineffectual, and the Mueller people actually did two very moronic things. They thought they were being clever when they announced that they had indicted these Russian troll farms, and they thought they got some good publicity because it proved that the Russians were trying to interfere with our democracy, and we caught them red-handed. Well, one of the companies that they indicted didn't exist during the 2016 election, so that was a mistake. They said they indicted a ham sandwich. But worse was they indicted another company, and the company showed up for their prosecution in court. And they said, okay, we're here, sue us, do what you got to do, we want to see what evidence you got, and we're going to defend ourselves. And the Mueller team responded, we can't. And the judge says, what do you mean we can't? So, well, they were improperly served. And the Russian troll farms counsel said, well, we're served, we're here, we know you sued us, so what do you got? And they said, well, we're not ready. And the judge said, what do you mean you're not ready? You're going to have to sue these guys. Now, this is a very, very moronic situation to be in, because if you want to say that you're going after these Russian trolls and you're going to prosecute them to the full extent of the law for interfering with our democracy, well, you better be prepared to prosecute them, not just hold a press conference and say you've indicted 12 Russian troll farms. We're going to get into more of this, and in case you missed the top gold, silver, and crypto stories, the week in review later today. But this thing is really turning into a disaster, because it doesn't look like they have information on Russian collusion with Trump, and it doesn't even look like they can properly prosecute the non-colluding Russian internet trolls who did try to interfere with the election, because they did not properly serve them, and they admitted that. Now it looks like they either have to drop the charges, which would look really moronic, or they have to try to prosecute them, and it's going to look foolish that they spent $20 million to find a Russian troll farm that probably spent $218,000 or something less than that on ads on Facebook. Who's an animal? Okay, well, Donald Trump is in trouble again for some of his statements. You remember in Raging Bull, where the character of the Raging Bull, Robert De Niro, is upstairs acting like a total Gavone, yelling at his wife, throwing his food around, yelling at his brother. And the guy downstairs, Larry, saying, knock it off up there, you're an animal. And De Niro said, who's an animal? Who's an animal, Larry? I'm going to come down there, I'm going to... Well, Donald Trump was responding to a law enforcement person about the problem of MS-13. And he said, well, a lot of these animals come into the country, and that created a big stir. The press immediately, without exception, said that Donald Trump called those people trying to get into the country, immigrants in general, were animals, and therefore he was a despicable person and a racist. And of course, he didn't say all immigrants. He was referring to MS-13. Well, Nancy Pelosi jumped aboard it, and once it became clear that he really wasn't talking about all immigrants, he was only referring to MS-13, they still have to go with, let's be against Donald Trump. And of course, Nancy Pelosi said, does he not believe in the spark of divinity, the dignity and worth of every person? Calling people animals is not a good thing. Thus saith St. Pelosi. It's quite humorous, because now they're not just saying that, what they're trying to say is that the press can make mistakes, and of course they can make mistakes, but not a mistake that's very simple. All you had to do was watch the 18 seconds of the clip to find out what he was saying. They're saying, oh, well, we made a mistake. You can't expect us to be correct 100% of the time. No, you can't. If there is some ambiguity, if there is something where you could see how you might have thought this, or there was a change in the circumstance, but not this. This is intentional to try to make it look like he said all immigrants are animals. But it goes one step further. I think Maggie Haberman of the New York Times says that Trump actually does this on purpose, that he speaks in this ambiguous fashion in order to trip up the press, so they would make these kinds of mistakes, so they then can say, gotcha. I'm not quite sure that's the case. That almost sounds like, well, we're going to see. Let's go to that one directly right now. It's for your own good. This is where the press has gone with this moronic point of view. So earlier last year, Trump said that the FBI, CIA, NSA, whatever, had bugged the Trump Tower, and the media went nuts saying this is not true. Trump is a conspiracy theorist. He's got no basis to say that. We all know. And they asked Clapper, Brennan, a lot of the people involved in the FBI, CIA, NSA, if this was true, and they denied it categorically. They said, no, it's not. Chuck Todd asked, I think it was Brennan, and he said, oh, I would know about this if it happened. And now they're saying, and he said it didn't happen. Now they're saying it happened and it was a good thing, and that they needed to happen. But it goes even one step further with the Washington Post. They're saying the FBI didn't use an informant to go after Trump. They used one to protect them. So like it was for his own good that they actually put someone in the campaign who to spy on the Trump campaign. That's like saying that the carjacker who takes your Maserati didn't really steal your car. He actually took it for your own benefit so you wouldn't have to pay the high insurance premiums. That gets even worse. This mentality where you just cannot ever admit you've done anything wrong. You actually, not only have you not done anything wrong, you've actually done something good. It reminds me of if anyone remembers in high school, you're probably forced to read Death of a Salesman, where the kid steals the football from the school, and the father, instead of saying, well, son, you shouldn't have done that, he says, oh, well, they should commend you for your initiative. You took the ball because you wanted to practice, and they shouldn't be mad at you. They should be commending you. Just like here, the FBI was actually trying to help Trump by spying on him. And it gets worse. You get here's a constitutional law scholar. You even get people who should be beyond this partisan fray. They're not even reporters. This guy is a constitutional scholar. I remember him in law school. He wrote the Horn books on constitutional law. But here's what he says. If Trump orders the undercover agent FBI used to detect his campaign's collusion with Russia, well, first of all, he's making an assumption. There was no collusion proved. He's making a conclusory statement about collusion. He was saying that they used an undercover agent to detect his campaign's collusion. That agent never detected any collusion. Then he says if he orders the undercover agent FBI used to detect the campaign's collusion with Russia to be outed, which he's not going to do because that agent's identification has already been outed, and that was done by the press, the resulting damage to our intelligence network could be incalculable. Yeah, it could be incalculably de minimis. We have no idea how little damage it has caused by putting this guy's name out there. His name is Halpern. He's a 70-year-old British U.S. spy. Then Tribe says, doing it corruptly to undermine the FBI's investigation into Russian subversion would be impeachable. No, it would not. He's basically saying that the FBI has some type of constitutional authority that if the president, who has constitutional powers, were to somehow question or interfere with that would be an impeachable offense. It would not. What he's failing to realize is he's actually saying he's siding with the unelected law enforcement to basically have their own discretion as to whom they're going to investigate. And knowing that the role of the FBI is not to investigate presidents. If you're going to try to get rid of a president, indict a president, impeach a president, that all happens through the elected officials, which is Congress. So Tribe seems to have lost the thread here, basically saying that there's almost like an assumption that there is collusion, Trump needs to be removed, and that if he tries to stop his own removal by the agencies that report to him, that somehow he should be impeached. And that's just wishful thinking, because here's a guy who also a few months back wrote a very moronic article about how constitutionally Hillary Clinton could still become president. Indeed, that is moronic. Jamie Dimon. Is he doing a U-turn on Bitcoin? And here's a company that has $40 billion that they've paid to settle fraud charges. And they're still on this, is calling Bitcoin a fraud. Well, JP Morgan has asked 29-year-old high flyer to draw up a cryptocurrency strategy. So maybe whether they think it's a fraud or not, they're still going to try to make some money off of this Bitcoin thing, it looks like. Controlling behavior is domestic abuse. This one takes Smaulgld's Moronica Prize for the week. This is an actual crime. Now, controlling behavior, in a criminal sense, you would think of things like locking someone in a room, kidnapping them. Yes, that would indeed be controlling behavior. That would indeed should be punishable. There are crimes of kidnapping, false imprisonment, where you restrict somebody's movement, you hold them against their will. That is indeed controlling behavior. That's not what the West Yorkshire police is talking about. They tweeted out about this crime that they're on the case here. They're going to crack down on controlling behavior, and they deleted the tweet. Why did they delete the tweet? They were probably embarrassed, but they do still have up on their website, and you can check this out. I'll put a link here. You can see it, westyorkshirepolice.uk, domestic abuse. in the tweet, they showed examples of these public relations posters that they actually had made, showing what controlling behavior is, and that this indeed was criminal. So in one of the posters, which you can see at this link, they had a woman who looked very, very distraught. And why was she so upset? Was she locked in the basement for 10 years? No. Was she kidnapped? No. What happened was, I feel like he's watching me even when I'm online. And in the West Yorkshire police tell them, tell someone before it's too late. Yes, your spouse or significant other may be looking at your tweets or looking at your Facebook and actually seeing what you're doing. Well, it gets worse. There was another one of a man, again, distraught, face in hand. He's at his wit's end. He's saying, she's always questioning me. And he's getting texts from his wife. Hi, babe, where are you? Who are you with? Call me now. When are you coming home? Well, that to me has been what I've always thought of as nagging. And now it was once nagging, appears to be a crime punishable for 5 years. You get a couple of those tweets. Where are you? When you coming home? Who you with? You better call me now. I've been trying your phone for the last 10 minutes. Well, that's controlling behavior. And that woman could go to jail for 5 years. Okay, that's moronic. Now, take care of the homeless with a tax. Now, anytime you institute a tax, there's always the possibility that there's unintended consequences or worse, predictable consequences. What's happening in Seattle is they've decided they're going to solve their homeless issue by taxing the large companies that make over 20 million in revenue, whether they make any profit or not. And they would include Boeing, Starbucks, Amazon. They're going to tax them something like $300 per employee. And they can use that money to help the homeless. Now, the problem with that is that those companies are probably, or at least one of them is probably, or many, maybe all of them are just going to leave. They're going to go somewhere where another state or city or town is going to give them a tax incentive, or at least won't have that onerous $300 per employee charge, and they're just going to leave. What does that mean? Well, it means then that those employees will no longer work in Seattle, will no longer pay taxes in Seattle, and the actual tax base will shrink, leaving the state, the city of Seattle with less money to help the homeless. Very moronic indeed. Now, a lot of our Moronica often deals with animals, sadly, and here is one where, indeed, we had the use of an animal at a prom. Someone thought it was a bright idea to have a welcome to the jungle, a theme for the prom, and they thought, what better than to have a live tiger? Now, not good for the tiger. Here's a magnificent animal. He is in a cage where he can barely walk. Also not good if he decides somehow to get out of there and figures out a way. Not good for the people that happen to be at the prom. Moronic indeed. And finally, this one is hard to bear. When you learn your dog is not a dog. A Chinese family purchased what they thought was a Tibetan Mastiff pup. And after a couple of years, the dog grew to the size they thought it should, a very large dog. But when it started walking on its hind legs, it realized it had a bear on its hands. And, of course, it returned the bear, frightened as they were of this bear. And the bear, luckily, didn't do anyone any harm. But just be careful when you buy your puppy and make sure you are buying, indeed, a canine. Thank you very much for listening, and join us later today for In Case You Missed It, top gold, silver, and crypto stories for the week ended May 20th. Hello, and welcome to Smaulgld's Moronica for the week ended May 20th, 2018. The week's news that made you scratch your head, cringe, or just say, that's moronic. This just in, Justin Trudeau. Now, we know Justin Trudeau is a fan of waving to large crowds that are waiting for him. We saw him get off the airplane a couple of weeks ago and wave to the adoring crowd that wasn't there. Well, he had another opportunity to reach it, the adulation of the masses at Yankee Stadium. For whatever reason, NYU, which has a graduating class of about 5,000, decided to hold its annual graduation ceremony and invited Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, to the ceremony to give the commencement address. And here he is walking out to the adoring crowd of the mostly empty Yankee Stadium. And remember our friend, I cannot pass up an opportunity to hear Justin Trudeau just this one more time.
We import more steel than the Americans import. Sorry, we have a significant trade surplus. The Americans have a significant trade surplus with us on steel.
Of course they do. I hope he gave a better speech to the graduating class at NYU. How to celebrate a burglary and do it on site. This is Moronica. Check out what this guy did after he robbed a store. He decided to celebrate, and here's how it happens. So he gets his loot. You can see the bag. He puts it down. He's safely outside of the place he's robbed, and now he's going to break it down and get busy. Now this is Moronica. He's caught on camera, his face, and of course, this gentleman was arrested. He's not really much of a dancer, is he?